On Friday night, he said to them, "You were born to be here." In other words, this was your moment. You were born to be here.
So the Soviets, right, they come on the ice, they got these nice stark red uniforms, and the CCCP, the Cyrillic, that was sort of otherworldly in its own. And they were also vaunted, and they played hockey like nobody else in the world. These guys obviously had played together for years and years, and they were a machine.
The U.S. team at that time was not a very big deal, so we were expecting a pretty much easy game. Besides, there were a lot of stories that the team consisted of students and that they were not playing well enough.
We were going to those Olympics thinking that it was going to be a cakewalk.
Somebody wrote that the ice will melt and turn to gold before the U.S. wins a game like this.
The Russians were really good. I think if they would have had a little more fun, enjoying themselves, they would have been even better.
It was a good game. The referee, the Finnish guy, Karl Geisler, he let a lot go. He let them play hockey. And that's the style of hockey I like.
If you look at the second goal of that game, when Christian shot it from center ice, and Tretiak made an extremely sloppy saves. And it was the 1 second left on the clock, and the Russian defense stopped and was looking at the clock. And obviously, the guy comes streaming right through them, Johnson, and scores.
I think that the turning point was when Tretiak made a mistake, when he kicked the puck back. And he thought it was finished, and it wasn't. We're still 1 second on the clock or something like that.
I remember that goal with 1 second left. I remember the second ticked off, and I remember looking at the referee, and he and my dad on the bench where my dad, was kind of verbally or non-verbally communicating with him because he was a Finnish ref. And you could tell, we're like, oh my God, it's got to count. And you could tell by the ref, you knew it was going to be a goal from what he was saying to my dad, kind of sign language.
Looking back, we scored an opportunistic goal, a surprise goal, huge goal. I remember that probably even more than Eruzione's goal,
Tretiak, who was the Soviet Union goalie, and I think universally considered to be one of the best ever to play the game, not just in Soviet Union, but anywhere, was replaced by Myshkin, who was a very good goalie himself, but not in Tretiak's league.
When they pulled Tretiak out of the goal, that was one of the most surprising things I had ever seen in sport. It was almost as if the coach was angry at him as opposed to making a move because he felt that it was a sports move to make.
But that kind of proved to everybody that they're really rattled. They are really rattled, and they didn't expect this to happen. And I think that could have been their downfall, to be honest with you.
When they end up pulling their very best goalie, you know that they're having issues, and they're not as confident as what they would expect, because that is not something that you have sort of in the playbook. Whenever you go into a competition, you got plan A, B, C, or D. Pulling Tretiak is probably plan M, N, P sort of thing. It's not one of those first things you're going to do.
Growing up, I wanted to be Tretiak. That's all I wanted to be. Was my only ambition in life up until about the age of 11. I had his picture on my wall, and when I looked at it, I didn't think about Lake Placid.
I think the Russians had a lot of faith in Myshkin. He was an accomplished goalie as well. But what I think it did was really, the U.S. looked at it like, hey, we just got the world's best goaltender pulled. We can do this. You don't have that mind game playing with you that the world's best goalie is playing against you. He's out of the net now. We can just play hockey.
I remember thinking, that's what happened last year, because Myshkin was actually the goalie who played that game that Soviet Union won 6-0 against the NHL All-Stars, and he had a shutout. So I was thinking, that's not bad. Now, Myshkin is going to come in and take care of business.
Was it the right decision to pull Tretiak? Who knows?
I think if they would have kept him in there, they might have pulled it off.
And then, the storybook ending with Mike Eruzione, who literally almost was not even on the team, maybe the last added as one of the senior captains to score the winning goal.
I do remember Eruzione with his wrist shot. I remember him coming across the middle, getting a clear shot. And I remember that, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened.
Finally Eruzione puts it in the net. It's like, yes.
When Mike Eruzione scored that fourth goal, I mean, that was bringing down the house.
Eruzione scored the 4-3 goal. We were all standing up cheering in the living room back home in front of the TV. It was a great feeling.
The place erupts. I'm thinking, this is all reality, because until then, the whole thing had an unreal kind of thing.
Back in the old days when they all huddle around the radio and listen to the whatever show on Sunday nights. That's what it was like. You got a group of 4 or 5 guys all down on their stomachs trying to look at it like you're going to see something happening when actually you're just wanting to be there so bad and just listening to the play-by-play as it's going on.
I remember watching the telecast, and they showed the bench with about 5 minutes left, and Herb Brooks was yelling at the players, play your game, play your game.
You often find when teams get the lead, sometimes they start falling back and start trying to play defense, and you always worry about that because all of a sudden it's sort of a change of strategy, and the strategy that they've already employed has gotten them into the lead, and to start changing things, you hate seeing that. And he just kept thinking, man, come on, Jim Craig, do not make a mistake. But I think the last maybe minute or so, you just felt that the Russians had given up and that they had finally fallen apart, and they realized that they were going to lose. It was inevitable.
I remember thinking that if they could just hang in there and stay close, they could give themselves a chance. And because the Russians always had the potential to pull out and just make it, a beat down 9-1, 9-2, whatever it might be. But they just kept hanging in there, and Jimmy Craig playing great goaltending as he did the whole Olympics. All of a sudden, all these pieces started falling into place where, hey, this could actually maybe happen.
Morrow finally cleared the puck, and Al Michaels starts that countdown. And he has that great "Do you believe in miracles" line. The horn goes off, and those players went nuts. That final, I want to say 30 seconds, it was this kind of sporting event. Even knowing what happened, you're watching that and going, okay, this has got to be a figment of my imagination. They got to score here. They didn't. Cleared the puck, game over, U.S. won.
My dad was so stoic. When the countdown took place, the play was in the other end, I go, I want to see what he does. And so I'm looking at him, and I remember he jumped up in the air. And I don't know if he was on the bench or not. He jumped in the air and boom, went down, and then just hightailed it off the bench and into the bowels of the building.
The place goes crazy. I mean, absolutely. It was such a wall of noise.
There was no one in that arena that was sitting down. There was no one that was sitting down. It was like thunder. The energy, I think it could have sustained for 9 periods of hockey. It was just people screaming and loving the moment and being so excited that we had done the impossible.
I went down to the locker room after, and everybody was going nuts, of course. And Herbie was in the back hallway, and he and I just sat down on the ground. I just sat on the cement, and I remember the words were, "Can you effing believe this?" I said, "No, I can't." And he was just sitting there. He was drained. And not only drained, I think he was really feeling bewilderment and wonderment and, just trying to take it in, not yet realizing, essentially what was accomplished, because it was mind-boggling.
All of a sudden, they won. I remember sprinting home down the road, trying to get home to tell my mom and my family we beat the Russians. We beat the Russians, and it was just amazing. And as a young kid, I still get chills talking about it.
I went outside and I saw fireworks, and I saw people dancing in the streets in Lake Placid, and they were singing and cheering. And it was the first time I had ever noticed USA, USA.
It reminded me of VJ Day and VE Day, the way all of the people were celebrating in that arena.
And so when the American hockey team actually won, amid the deafening chants of USA, USA, and Jim Craig skated around the ice wrapped in the American flag, there's this sense that this was just a jolt of old-fashioned patriotism.
To be able to bring a country together, not so much just the sporting nation, but the entire country, it's just got to give you a feeling of such great pride.
Very often the people ask me, did they send you to Siberia or they hang you in Red Square? No, that's not happening.
Somewhere along the tournament, they figured out that if good things happened and they played right, they could get it done, and they did.
And I remember how uplifted the country felt. It was like putting a man on the moon. It was like, we can do anything. If we could beat the Russians in hockey, we could beat poverty. You know, there's no issue in front of us that's too hard.